Okay. So the way that questions will work this time around for our Levi Strauss presentation, you actually can type in your question in the chat as we go along, and Tracy will answer them as we go. So welcome everyone to our Society of American Archivists Student Chapter at San Jose State University presentation on the Levi Strauss Archive. Today we have Tracey Panek, a historian at Levi Strauss, and she's going to speak to us about her role and mission at the archive and museum for such an iconic brand. I'm sure we all have had owned a piece of Levi denim in our lifetime. I know I have. As the corporate historian, she not only helps answering historical questions about the company, she also helps the designers, the brand managers, the executives, and other employees whose work requires materials from the archives. She also contributes to the company's blog, Unzipped, about what's happening at the archive and highlighting interesting finds and bits of history. And prior to working at Levi Strauss, she worked for AAA for 14 years as their company historian. Additionally, she is a leader of a Maori cultural heritage group. So she was actually born in New Zealand, came to US at a young age, but kept in touch with her cultural roots. So today she's going to be telling us about the background of the Levi Strauss archive, how the brand is moving into the digital age with their archive, and she actually has a surprise for us at the end. So welcome, Tracy, and you may begin.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I just want to take a look. For those of you who will, just humor me and turn on your videos for a minute before I share my screen. I just want to get a look at who I'm who I'm talking to. Hi. Are you all at home mostly? Okay. Yay. Yeah. We'll all kind of wave. You wouldn't know it from my background. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm going to just click through and see everybody. This is fun to see everybody. You wouldn't know it from my background, but I am in my bedroom at my house in Concord. And if I were in the archives in San Francisco, you would see what is behind me, because this is part of the archives that we have back there. We have a little, we have a blue fireproof safe, and we have things that are on display and other items. But hey, thanks for sharing your screens. Now I know who I'm speaking to. Okay, I'm going to go back and see if I can get ready to share my screen. And as Danielle mentioned, and thank you for that introduction, Danielle, I am happy to answer questions as we go through. Okay, let me see. There we go. Have you got my screen in? Everybody see that? Okay, somebody unmute yourself and tell me if you can see, so I can make sure that this is looking.
You're good.
All right, very good. I am delighted to be here chatting with you. It's been a busy day for me at work already, and I hope you've had a good day as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, a little bit about the Levi Strauss and Company archives that I oversee, and one of the first projects and challenges that I had when I started there. And then I'll give you a look at a day in the life at the archives. And I say when I share that, it'll be a little tongue-in-cheek, because every day is a little different, which is part of what I love about my job. But I love you students down at San Jose State, and I'll tell you why. I've had a couple of interns from San Jose State, and I've also had folks that I have worked with from your program. So you're doing great things down there, and I'm happy to chat with you. Okay. I always start by sharing just a little bit of background about the company's history, and it goes back to our founder. Here he is, a very young Levi Strauss. He was born in Bavaria, today's Germany, back in the mid-1800s, and he immigrated to America, and he came first not to San Francisco. He actually went first to New York, where he had a couple of brothers who were running a dry goods wholesale business. And while he was there, he learned the ropes of the business. And a month before leaving for San Francisco, because he had heard about the gold rush and decided that he was going to head to the West Coast to expand the company's to expand his brother's business there, he became a naturalized American citizen. I say that because one of our big efforts right now at the company is to encourage people to vote. And we can actually say that we go back to Levi himself, who was a naturalized American and voted, served on juries, even marched in a rally. And if you check our blog, I wrote a story about this, one of the many things that I do, and it should be posted, I think, on Friday, about his early civic efforts. So that's Levi. Levi came around to San Francisco, arriving during the gold rush in 1853. And pretty quickly thereafter, he set up a business not far from the waterfront. If you'll see look in this picture, you can see those numbers 14 and 16. That refers to Battery Street, the address on Battery Street where the early company headquarters was, and we are still on Battery Street, but we're much further down. Now we're closer to Green Street and closer, really at the base of Coit Tower. But we've been in this area for over 150 years. And it was a tiny innovation, this one, in fact, that led to Levi changing the focus of his business and what would change the direction of and course of Levi Strauss & Company. In 1872, Levi received a letter from one of his customers inviting him to take out a patent for an unusual process. He ordered some fabric and some other supplies from Levi, and he told him about this unusual process of riveting trousers. And by adding little copper rivets like this one, you could create really durable pants. Levi hadn't done any manufacturing up to this point. He'd only been mainly exporting and importing, but he agreed to take out a patent with this man whose name was Jacob Davis. And on May 20th, 1873, the company was granted this patent. We refer to this date, May 20th, as the birthday or the birth of blue jeans. And it's an important date in our history. We not only began manufacturing once we received this patent, but it is the origin of the blue jean that we all know and love. Hopefully you do as much as I do, but it is now considered by many the world's most ubiquitous garment. It's found everywhere, not just here in the San Francisco area where it began. The archives that I head up, that I manage, are now 31 years old. Last year we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the archives, and there's only been 2 directors of the archives, myself and the person before me, who was the historian for almost 25 years. She did a great job forming the foundation of the archives. And here's a look at some of the pieces that we have in the archives. Everything from the oldest pair of blue jeans in the world that are on the left-hand side. We call them XX. And you may notice some things that are a little different about those as compared to your current blue jeans. And maybe I'll take a little pause and see if there's anybody who can tell me what's different about this pair as compared to your blue jeans.
The buckle on the back.
One pocket.
Yep, there's a single pocket, there's a buckle in the back. That's absolutely right. Thank you, whoever that was, whoever those 2 were that shared that. What you can't see, because it's a little harder, are the suspender buttons that are at the top of the waistband. We don't have those anymore. And you won't see on this pair any belt loops. So those were all features that were added much later. But the blue jeans that you know and that we wear today are pretty close to what they were originally. And there on the right-hand side is another important part, another important piece in our archives. It is a a leather jacket that was purchased by Albert Einstein when he immigrated to the United States in the 30s and became a naturalized American citizen. He wore it so frequently that he was featured wearing it on the cover of Time magazine. And if we have time later and you're interested, I will tell you the story about how I managed to get that into our archives. We also have in the archives, we have everything from typical archival materials like correspondence. So the piece on the left is one of the few letters with Levi's signature that we have in our archives. Anybody want to take a guess why we might not have many letters of Levi that are left? Anybody want to say?
Earthquake?
Fire.
I heard earthquake. Maybe I heard the word fire. If you were the ones that said that, you would be correct. That's right. So for many early businesses in San Francisco, my colleagues over at Wells Fargo, it's true for them as well. The earthquake and fire destroyed much of not only our headquarters, but a lot of the early materials. So we are lucky to have what we do. Oops, I think I went backwards on that one. Okay, so that's one of the few pieces that we have left from Levi. The piece on the right is one of the many pieces of marketing that we have in the archives. This one from the 30s, when the company selected the cowboy as its marketing figure. And in this piece, it reminded everyone that Levi's were worn by all cowboys. So by the 30s through the 60s, the cowboy rodeo was really the name of our game. Here's a look at the archives with designers. The biggest users of the archives at Levi Strauss are the designers who will come in and take a look at garments. Those are garment boxes that are laid out on the table, and they will use the pieces as inspiration for the latest Levi's looks, or at least to understand the aesthetic. And here's another look at the archives from another angle. And we also host, when we can, when it's not in the middle of a pandemic, we host a lot of visitors to the archives. And these are folks that are coming to look at the oldest blue jeans in the world. This is the front side of them that you're looking at. And they are holding something in their hands. Anybody want to guess what they're passing around there with their white gloved hands? Any guesses? Might be hard. I will tell you.
Magnifying glass.
Oh, yes. Was that Christine?
Yes.
You are doing really well, Christine. You got the right answer. It is a magnifying glass. And the reason that we have it out is because only the pre-1890 era Levi's have certain lettering on the rivets, and they're taking the magnifying glass so they could look at the rivets in detail and see what I look for if I am trying to authenticate a genuine pair of Levi's. And here's a look at our museum. We have a small museum at Levi's Plaza, our headquarters, and I manage that as well. And it is really, in many ways, a recreation of our archives. And you can see the little lettering there on the left of the door, experience the archives. So visitors can come in, take a look at some of the pieces that are on display. On the back wall, there is a revolving case where people can push the button and take a look at some of the pieces in the archives. And they can look at videos, and a wall where it shows the evolution of the blue jean and some other cool things. And my offices are right behind this area, but you would have to have a special badge to get in. So I'm going to pause there for just a minute just to see if there's any questions before I dive into the next part of my presentation. Any questions? Okay. You're all being very polite, but if you want to ask something, you can either unmute yourself or put a note in the chat box, and Danielle will prompt me and let me know that you've got a question. So a little bit of background. I have been at the Levi Strauss & Company archives for 6 years. I started in 2014. And one of the things that I was tasked with doing was to bring the archives into the 21st century, into the digital age. And let me explain about the challenge, because it was pretty immense. So as you now know, the archives has been around for a long time, 30 years last year, but when I took over, it was about 24 years old. And the collection, which was amazing, it's the best collection of vintage garments anywhere, and has some other amazing things. But everything was tracked on those binders that you see, in the binders that you see on the shelves, if you can imagine this. So you would have to come in, either you would get in touch with the historian or archivist and find out from them if there might be something in the collection, or you would come in person and open one of the binders up and take a look. And what I was tasked with doing within 1 year's time was to bring the collection into a digital archive. So what you see on the right is what we now have. What you see on the left is what I started with. And that's Hannah, one of my first interns.
Tracy,
yeah.
sorry, one moment. There is a question in the chat. The question is, how did you convince the company to invest in a small museum at headquarters, and was that difficult?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And it opened in 2009, before my time. But I will tell you that one of the keys to successful support of an archives or a museum is to have a champion executive. We were very lucky that the archives itself was established by the great-great-grandson of Levi, Bob Haas, for whom the Haas family, the School of Business at UC Berkeley is named for the same family. Bob hired the first professional historian and archives, and believed very strongly in the importance of sharing the company's heritage. And it's because of his initial leadership that the company recognized how important it was. And in 2009, one great example of that is that the company invested to have that built. Now, it's not a huge space, I will say, but space is at a premium in San Francisco, so people can come in and get a look. And we do have an area where we can change things out, and so we can make it fresh. But it's a good question. But you definitely want great allies in a business that you work in. Good.
Thank you. There is just one more question.
Yeah, please.
How many archivists do you have on staff?
We are scrappy and small. So there's myself, I am the historian, and there is a full-time archivist, Laura, who is on staff. And we do a lot of different things. We are supported by, we usually have an intern, at least one intern that comes in a year, during the year. We haven't this year because of the strange circumstances. We hope to next year. We sometimes as many as two interns, and then we occasionally have vendors that we look to help us with some of the work that we need to have to get done. So we are a small but a pretty flexible team, and I'm very envious of groups like my colleagues over at Wells Fargo, where they have a historical department and lots of people helping them. Is that it? Good?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So here's a look at the first step that I went through in turning the archives into a digital collection. I've got a picture on the right there of those binders. The binders were in many cases handwritten. Do not do this if you are starting archives, never do this. And they were doing this into 2014. In fact, when I joined, and there was still a staff person who had been there for 10 years that was there, and she had a very hard time letting go of this. It was very difficult to turn away from this. So what we did is we found somebody who could help us. Literally what we did was scan these all these binders, and we found somebody who could transcribe, if that's, I guess that's probably the best way to put it, transcribe all this information and convert it into spreadsheets. So each binder was represented some collection, like the Western Shirt collection or the correspondence collection. And so when we finished this initial project, we had multiple spreadsheets. And then the next phase we went through was to create a single, it's very hard for you to see, but we created a combined spreadsheet with all of this information. And that was the first process in converting to electronic tracking. When I started, and I found this hard to believe, so I imagine you will, as you will also find this hard to believe, there was no working scanner. There was no working scanner. We had to upgrade the equipment and processes, and one of the things we did was to buy a state-of-the-art scanning machine. We did not, as you'll see in just a minute, we did not do the bulk of the scanning to populate the archival tool, the digital tool that I'll show you in just a minute. But being able to have important equipment like a scanner like this for ongoing needs was just, it had to happen. So what we did is I joined the company in June 2014, and in December, we essentially closed down for a month, and we had a month-long photo shoot. We brought photographers, we essentially brought a photo studio into the archives, and we pulled out the garments that were stored on site. And it was an assembly line process. You can see some of the boxes lined up in order, an assembly line process of photographing these, because these, the garments are the most important part of the collection. And here's a look at some of what was created after that photo shoot. It was a massive project. We had to make sure that the garments were color, what's the word they call it? We had to make sure that the colors that people were seeing in the photographs were what you would see in real life. Calibrated. That was the word I'm thinking of, that they were calibrated. And that's what the shot is at the left, the color calibration of these jeans. So it was, we had professional photographers who took photographs that were so high resolution you could see down to the rivet level. This is incredibly important for our designers to be able to see our collection with this kind of clarity. And then we selected the most important materials to scan. And we became very familiar with this guy here, whose name I'm forgetting because it's now 5 years, but we selected a vendor. They were located in Sacramento, and every 2 weeks he would come to the archives and pick up new boxes to take away and have scanned. And it was quite a process of doing that. From there, we then had to create a standard indexing and file naming system. Here's some notes about what we did. It was, for us, it was important to have file names that reflected, that were a little bit of a description of what we were looking at, and also helped us to locate them. So they're probably a little longer than our vendor wanted, but it worked for us. And then the last part of this, the process of this creating this digital system, was to upload into our digital tool. So we call it the Virtual Vault Digital Archives. Our museum is called the Vault, and employees knew the Vault. In fact, sometimes they would use the term the Vault synonymously with the archives. They didn't. So we knew what they meant, but being able to identify this as the virtual vault helped them to make that leap as to what was included in here. And you're getting a little bit of a look at it, but we went through several iterations before it looked like this. We did some user testing that helped us to determine what order of things we should place things in. This system, which now has about 150,000 digital assets, has been incredibly important for us, especially in times like today where we could not do our work because we're not in our offices. And I should have said that at the beginning. So I'm at my home, as I mentioned, in Concord, and we had to leave the offices in the middle of March 13th, and I have not been back to the office with the exception of one day last week to check on the collection. I've been doing all my work from home, and we will not return there before January of next year. So if I had not had this system, we would not have been able to do the work that we do. And I think, yeah, I'm going to take a pause there to see if there's any questions before I share a couple of examples of how useful this system has been.
I was just wondering who's the primary users of your archive? Is it the employees doing like research?
It is. You cannot have access to this this virtual vault, our tool, unless you are an employee or unless there's some other exception. The only other exceptions we've given out are for MoMA in New York when they were doing an exhibition, for another exhibition that we just opened in February at the Contemporary Jewish Museum so that the curators could see what we have. But it's really an internal system. Thanks for that question, Christine. So the primary users of our archives are employees, and that's pretty typical of a corporate archives. And I will say that in a corporate setting, often your employees don't want to be the ones to do the heavy lifting. They want you to give them information, and they want it very quickly. And so oftentimes they'll just come to Laura or I, and we give them the answers by using this tool. Anything else?
We do have a couple questions in the chat. The first one is, what software are you using to manage and preserve the digital assets?
I spent a lot of time looking for something. So we work with a vendor from Atlanta, Georgia. They're called Heritage Works, and works with a WERKS, which I think it must be a reference to their electronic work. But they had experience working with other apparel companies. So some of our competitors like Calvin Klein Archives and Oscar de la Renta Archives, they had used before. And they're full service. So because we're such a small team, we were able to literally send our hard drives to them, and they uploaded it to the system. We have an ongoing meeting with their staff every week to improve our tool or to talk about what help we need. So it's not a system that unless you went to Heritage Works, you would get it from them. I've used other things before, but it also looks very professional. So for our employees, when they get on and use this, and they can use it, by the way, on their computer, iPad, their phone. Whoops, here's my phone. I'll show it down here. I share that with you because sometimes this is really important. I've had designers who are at a flea market and they want to know if there is a particular garment in the collection, whether they should buy it or if it's already in our archives. So great question.
Okay, there is one more. Do you have a fashion or textile background?
Only a personal interest. So my background is in history. So I studied history at UC Berkeley, and then went and got my master's in public history at Sacramento State University, where where I took a course of traditional history classes, and then you could also focus in something. And I was interested in archives and worked at the California State Archives, where I got a lot of experience and learned what I liked and what I didn't like. I knew I couldn't work at a government archives as someone who processed a single collection day after day. I knew I needed something with variety, which is one of the reasons I went into corporate archives. And I liked the challenge of making the archives relevant. And it also worked with my personal life. I had 2 young children when I started, and then had a third. And the corporate world allowed me to be flexible enough to be a mom and to do my work. Good?
Yes, there is one more question if you have time for it, or I don't know if you'd like to move on.
Yeah, please. No,
Okay.
no, go ahead.
Does full service include designing and managing the website you have on the screen?
Yes, it does. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason that we went with them. Laura and I do not have time to manage the details of how it looks. We also wanted to make sure we had somebody who was going to be able to back up the system and also be on the leading edge of what happens in this in this digital world for archives. So because they have a number of customers, and some of their customers are sports teams, which are becoming more and more popular. So here in the Bay Area, for instance, they also manage the archives for the Golden State Warriors. And I helped them to get the contract for Hewlett Packard. So they recently took over handling some of those. So they know what they're doing, and yeah, they handle all of that.
Okay, another one came in. How do you find out about or research for a position at a corporate archive?
Well, probably the easiest thing for you to do is to do what you're doing already. You join SAA, the Society of American Archivists, and get into the business archive sector. So we have listservs. We get in touch with one another. And there's also an international organization, but here in the United States, the Business Archives section of the Society of American Archivists is probably a really good start. And then there are smaller groups like Society of California Archivists. We have an organization here as well where we connect. We know each other because it's such a small field. Last year, in fact, I hosted an international group of business archivists at Levi's Plaza. They were from all over the world. So yeah.
Okay, and those are all the questions for now.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Well, I just kind of gave an overview as to how we moved from this very manual system when I started to a digital system. And we launched the digital platform, our digital tool, within 6 months. So we started the whole process of digitizing things at the end of 2014 when I started. And in June 2015, we launched this tool, which was, I will tell you, it was just an amazing amount of work. I had, the great vendors that we worked with. And I also convinced the company to hire a third person. So during the time when we were doing this, we had an extra person to help because it was just a lot of work. But I'm going to show you now, I'm going to give you an example of just how useful the system is. Now, I know because you can probably figure this out just based on the work that you do and some of the classes that you've taken, how relevant it is to have a digital system. But for us, I'm going to share just a couple of examples. This is Harrison Cole, one of many people who sometimes get in touch with me because they find interesting things. Harrison is holding a metal detector. He is from Soulsby, California, which is an old mining town that dates back into the mid 1800s. And he got in touch with me and sent me a couple of photos. Can you make out the writing on that button? I hope so. I hope you're all saying to yourself, it says Levi Strauss and Company. Yes, it does. And that's because he had found a button underneath one of the cabins there. And he sent a picture and he wanted to know how old it was and a little bit of background about that. Now, imagine if you had just the manual system that was in place in 2014. You would have to, well, first of all, you would have to be able to get into the archives, which we haven't been able to do today, but you would have to literally open up boxes and start to look for those details. You might, if you were somebody like, I'm exaggerating a little bit because I now have a lot of institutional knowledge. I know my collection pretty well, so I might have an idea of where these were, but I didn't offhand. And we did a lot of looking in our digital system and we tracked it down. So here's what it looks like on a sack coat from the early 1900s. It was, this kind of jacket would have been worn typically by like a railroad engineer or the like. And being able to know that a jacket or a button from a jacket like this was found in an area where it was found gives us information as well as helps the people that want these answers. So a digital system is just really useful. And what I'm learning from my vendors that some of you may already know is that that machine intelligence, artificial intelligence with computers, it's now becoming much more easy for a system to go through and find, if you're trying to match things up, to be able to do that in a really speedy way. So it's fun. Oh, and by the way, along with finding the button, we were able to track down one of the earliest appearances of that jacket in one of our catalogs. This one, I believe, dates to about maybe 1899. It's the one down near the bottom on the left. And here's just a quick look at another thing that we've been doing since COVID. When COVID hit in March, we ended up having to close all of our stores in short order. It was incredibly difficult for us and any business to operate when you don't have stores that are open. So guess what was going full bore during that time? It was our e-commerce work. And so people were still buying online, and we launched something in April called From the Archives. This is a series of emails that goes out to people who have purchased Levi's or have signed up to get emails. And the From the Archives emails there's usually a graphic from the archives and a little story that I help put together. They've been really popular. So I get click-through rates. That's what they call them. When somebody looks at an email and they think, that looks interesting, I'm gonna open it up. And then on the bottom of the email, there might be a link that says, and now shop for something like this, or shop for the From the Archives email that was about that overalls for babies. That was about a pair that I'd found in a Central California barn. And so they were over 100 years old. And at the end of that email, it said, get buy your own Levi's children's items. And the idea was they've lasted so long that you want to get something that's going to be equally of value to you. So those are just two examples of how we've been able to use the digital archives, two of many hundreds of examples of why moving into the digital realm is really important to us. Okay, any questions before I move on to a day in the archives? Okay, silence means none, and that's okay. So let me take you through a day in the archives. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this is just some of what I do. Every day is a little bit different, but I'll start by sharing this picture that I thought you'd appreciate. If you look over in the right hand, you might see the word San Jose, which I hope you're looking for since that's where your school is based. This is a picture I got last week from someone down in the San Jose area asking, are the men in this picture, and the picture dates to 1906. It apparently is a picture of men who were cleaning up after the 06 earthquake, because of course it did damage to San Jose as well. And they asked, are any of these men wearing Levi's? So look very closely. I don't know if you can tell. It wasn't easy. I had to do a little digging. I got a little bigger picture, but I was able to give them some information. I won't get into the details of how I know that, but answering questions from the public is a large part of what I do. Just under half of the inquiries that I get come from people who are outside of the company asking to know about things. This is a picture that you're probably very familiar with, people in a Zoom meeting. I do a lot of presentations, but because of COVID, a lot of them now, I will say all of them are online. And this is one that I did last week for our group. DTC, you'll see the name on the top of the screen, means direct to consumer. These are the folks that help us create our new Levi's app. They are the ones that help us with the e-commerce sales site. And I've done some work with them, but not a whole lot. And they came to me last week and they said, we're going to have a little happy hour. This is what's been happening with a lot of businesses. We do it at Levi's, where you want to have a team building exercise. And so you might have a little 30-minute happy hour once a month with your team. And they were having a happy hour, and they came to me and asked if I could do something. And I volunteered to do a little 10-minute trivia game. because you wanted it to be light. You want to share something, but you don't want it to be like, oh no, another presentation. So let me just show you, I'll give you an example of what I did and how we share some of our information. So this is Levi's Plaza. This is where I work when there's not a pandemic. You can see at the top of the screen, there's Coit Tower. We're located at the base of it. If you cross the street, you can start taking the stairs up to it. But Levi's Plaza was designed by a very well-known architect. It was opened up in 1980. And one of the questions I asked, and I will ask all of you, so you've got to guess, and I had them take their videos off and they had to hold up their fingers. I won't make you do that, but they had to hold up their fingers and say it was 1, 2, or 3, because it made it a little more interactive. And they had to guess if underneath Levi's Plaza there was either 1, a hoard of gold coins, number 2, the remains of a cemetery, or number 3, a gold rush era ship. Does anybody want to guess? Unmute yourselves and tell me.
2, number 2.
I guess number 3.
1, 3.
Okay, I hear all of them.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna say 3.
So that was fun. Everybody had a different idea. The true answer is a gold rush era ship. And in fact, when they were when they were building Levi's Plaza, they did some drawings. The architect did some drawings. Here's what the ship looks like. I love to say that we're literally built on the foundations of the gold rush, which we are at Levi's Plaza. Here is what they considered doing. They were going to make a viewing platform where you could, that's Battery Street where the car is, because we're located on Battery Street. And you could drive past, or you could stop and look down at the ship if they had put in that platform. Sadly, they didn't, but a lot of employees don't even know that that's there, and so that was a good way to share it with them. All right, that's enough of our trivia. I'm doing it again tomorrow for my own group. But the other thing that I do a lot of is I acquire things. Sometimes they're donated because they are made at the company, and I get the groups within our company or our designers to donate them. Other times I get inquiries, would you like to acquire this for your archives? First, I try to see if they will be willing to donate it. And sometimes they do. Those are the good people. The ones that will donate. The ones that don't, then I have to bargain with them. And this guy, oh gosh, I've forgotten his name, but he got in touch with me last week with these photographs of a very early, we call this a type 1 Levi's jacket. We know it's a type 1 because there's just a single pocket on it. And this belonged to his grandfather who grew up in Fresno, and he wanted to know if I wanted to buy it. So that's something that I do. I do a lot of fact checking and graphics support. And by graphics support, what I mean is if we do an email that we want to send out to people and we want to have some historical image, they will come to me. Or if we do postcards like what you see examples of here, then they'll come to me to get images. And I try to make sure that they come through me and so we can do some fact checking, because sometimes they're not always right. So this is an example of something London sent to me last week. Our London Levi's office, they're creating some postcards with these images, and those descriptions on the right side are what they're going to put on the back of the postcards. And one of them at the top was a 1967 poster, and they described how the poster was related to the hippie era. What was funny is that they spelled hippie, H-I-P-P-Y, which is not technically incorrect, but here in the States, we never spell it that way, and especially not at the hippie headquarters, San Francisco, where the Haight-Ashbury was. So I put that little blue arrow there, and I said, change it to H-I-P-P-I-E. And then they also, down below the little blue arrow is a note that the date of that denim banner is incorrect. They identified it as 1940s, but it wasn't. It was from the 50s. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff. I do a lot of writing as well. This is an example of some work that I've been editing with one of our folks from our internal comms team. It was September marks the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. This World War II was an important era for Levi's. They changed dramatically, and so I'm writing a story about it, which should post next week sometime if you look at our blog. But this is part of what I do. And this is what our blog looks like. This was a story I did earlier in the year about a store that sold Levi's to celebrities in New York. Everyone from John Lennon and Yoko Ono to the actor Montgomery Clift. I also do a lot of exhibition work, and I mentioned earlier about the contemporary, well, I might not have named it, but I mentioned exhibitions. So we did a major opening of an exhibition here in San Francisco. It's about to reopen. It's called Levi Strauss, A History of American Style. Here's the museum. It's a beautiful museum right across from the Yerba Buena Center. They took an old PG&E substation and renovated it, added that beautiful diamond cube on the outside, and you can see the exhibition there. Here's a peek inside at what it looks like. 90% of the artifacts that are on display come from our archives. And if you are studying archives, then you'll know that you're going to do a lot of accessioning. So that's another of the many important things that we do. This is our accessions log. So we have that great tool that I showed you earlier, the virtual vault, but we use Access to accession new things that come in, like our Super Bowl 50 garments that came in 2016. And then I am also the media spokesperson for Heritage. So I do a lot of interviews with media. I'm on my second, let's see, in this past week, I'm getting ready to do a second podcast interview. So a lot of storytelling, a lot of answering information for the press. And I think that is it about my little, yes, that's it for my little presentation. And I'll see if there's any questions, and then I'll just give you at the very end, I'm going to give you my little surprise that Danielle told you about. So any questions that have come up?
Yes, there are a couple questions that came up. Let's see, the first one is, do you track your inquiries in a software so that you can analyze the type of inquiries? Because you mentioned over half of your requests are from the general public.
Yes, that's someone who's thinking. That's a great question. And yes, we do. We do it in an Excel spreadsheet, and we track. In fact, I was looking to see how many requests I'd gotten this quarter. So we're close to 300. And that, for a two-person team that does lots of different things, that's a lot of requests that come in. But yeah, we do. We think it's really important to find out when they're like peaks and valleys, although I have to say it's been more peaks than valleys. And we also like to know what groups we've helped, especially internally. So one of the reasons I did that little trivia game that I shared with you is because I hadn't done a lot of work with that direct to consumer team, and I wanted them to know who I was, what we had, and why they should get to know a little bit more about the archives and what we do. So yeah, good question.
Okay, the next question is, let's see for non-donated acquisitions, is there a set budget? How do you determine what to spend, and do you often pass on things?
Yes to all those questions. There is a budget, but it's not huge. Because of the times right now, I have to go through and get approval for everything at the moment. But for anything that's really big, a big ticket item, then I have to go begging and literally go begging. I mean, that sounds bad, but I have to go get approval and find money. So for the Einstein jacket, which was an acquisition in 2016, I was at an auction in Christie's, in London at Christie's, where it was being auctioned off. And I had the president of the Levi's brand on the phone with me. It was 2 in.the morning. We had discussed this in advance, but I was letting him know, let's see, the bidding's at this, and what are we, are we okay to go further? So yeah, the answer to the question is there is a budget, but for any big major purchases, we do have to get some approval. The good people donate the stuff.
Oh, that's good. Do you ever offer virtual internships?
Tell me that again. I missed it. Do I offer virtual what?
Internships?
You know what? The longer that we are in this situation, the more I am thinking of it. In fact, I was talking about this just last week. So it's possible, because there's definitely work that needs to be done that could be done at home and on somebody's desktop. Yeah. Stay tuned.
Okay. You clearly wear a ton of hats for your position. Out of all the different aspects of your job, which do you enjoy the most, and what has shifted the most for you during this pandemic?
Yeah, I love the variety in my job. So I love the discovery part, finding things, and I'm going to share something with you in just a minute, but I love the discovery part. I love learning Levi's stories. So we have something in our museum called the Tell Us Your Levi's Story Station. And visitors can come in and record a story. And then I contact them later for a picture to go with the story. But that story platform has gone online during the pandemic, and we are getting stories. I'm adding them certainly weekly, but in some cases almost daily. I love finding stories out about how people have used Levi's, and I'll share just one with you and that is that I got a photograph in an email of a Levi's wallet from the 80s or 90s. Not terribly exciting, but the woman who was from Dublin, Ireland, was managing a film production for a missing persons case, and the wallet was a key artifact or a key piece of evidence in the missing persons case, and she needed an exact replica for the film production. We have been looking everywhere to try to find it, but I'm adding that story to our story bank. I mean, who knew? Another story happened during the terrible Las Vegas shootings a couple years ago, where a Levi's belt literally saved someone's life, because they were able to use the belt to break open a window and get in to safety. All right, I told two stories. I meant to just tell one, but that was because I love the telling stories part. Any more questions?
Yes, there is one more.
Okay.
How long did it take you to become so familiar with the company's history, clothing line, etc.?
Well, I'm still learning. I was hired in, this will help. I was hired in June 2014, and in August 2014, I had to do my first media appearance where they came and filmed me and I had to speak, and I had to be familiar with most significant aspects of the company's history. Those first few months, I was learning as much as I could, and I continue to learn. So I think it's an ongoing process, and you do your best. And sometimes you say, I don't know, but I'm going to go and find out, and then I can share that. Does that answer it?
Yes. One more popped up, and we only have a few minutes left before we go up to our limit. So what is your process for developing exhibitions, for coming up with a story that you will tell?
Well, there's a lot of ways that we come up with. It could be a particular event, like we were getting ready to do an Olympics. We were getting ready to do an Olympics exhibition. Well, that didn't happen. Sometimes museums will come to us with a theme, and we offer up some for the exhibition, the major exhibition that we launched in February. That was a combined discussion with the curatorial team at the museum to figure out what it would be. So it just kind of depends. All right, let me see what we're at. We're at 6:55. So let me pause for a minute, because, I promised you a surprise, and I'm going to share it. And I hope this works, because, if I were in the archives, typically what I would do is pull out garments. The lighting has gone strange here now in my room. I would pull out a garment and share with you. But because I'm not on the archives, I don't have access to all my things. However, we recently acquired this very unusual pair of Levi's, and I'm going to show it to you. And I'm going to see if you can guess. I hope the lighting works here. I'm going to see if you can guess what is unusual about it. So this is one of those pieces I had to get permission to acquire during this period, but here it is. Let me hold it up close. That virtual background is making this difficult, but okay. Let me hold it up close. Can you see?
No,
Okay, I'm holding it up. Do you see part of it?
we see your presentation.
Oh, let me stop sharing. Thank you, thank you. All right, okay, let me do this again. All right, now, can you see part of the garment? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm in gallery view. This wasn't a good view. So can you tell from the little small bit that you're seeing, what's different about this pair of Levi's than any other pair that you might see? So I'm going to open this up so you can get a little more of a clue.
Say the inside does not match the outside.
Yes. Don't you normally have the dark blue side on the outside?
Yes.
Yes,
Inside
yes,
out.
yes.
Cool.
These are the only inside out Levi's that I've come across. So the outside is this light color and the inside is all blue. Everything else is just as you would see it. So these are a pair of 501s. They've got this button fly. They were purchased at an estate sale by someone. They were apparently owned by someone named Prince Helfich. And the Helfich family runs a very famous river rafting business. They were in Oregon and now they're in Idaho on the Salmon River. But there is a connection to the Haas family. I won't tell you all of it, but I can only tell you that when these arrived at my home, because I had them sent to me here, I was so delighted because they will allow me to tell another very cool story about, can you believe that we created these inside out jeans? There's no record of it anywhere, but they obviously exist. And they're going to be a fun one to tell if I have to do a media story or something. And that's one of the joys of my work, is when I can find cool pieces like that. Okay, I see we're at like 6:59. Is it time to say goodbye, Danielle?
It is. So thank you so much for being here today. And everyone, thank you for coming. The recording will be up on our SAAC website and YouTube channel within a week. So be sure to look for those. As your SAAC event coordinator, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you again, Tracy, for coming. And that was a great presentation. I really enjoyed myself. And so I hope everyone has a great evening. Tracy, if you have any last words, then you can.
Good luck in your work. You're about to get into a really fun career. Thanks for having me, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Tracy. Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.